I didn't learn anything. I got verification on what I already knew. And this is a resilient team. It already was a resilient team, and we added pieces to that resilient team. So we're built to handle some stuff, and we did that today against a very good opponent.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Happy Friday, especially to Detroit Lions fans, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Jay Croucher. Of course, Matthew Berry, he's still in Kansas City. Berry, your ride or die delivered. Congratulations. That's got to be a great feeling after 1 week.
You know what? Absolutely. A lot of people say, hey, you shouldn't take week one victory laps, that you should wait, you know what I mean? Because it's a long season, but it's just one game, it's 1 week. But you know what? Woo-hoo! I'm all tied up here. Otherwise, I would get up and I would actually take a victory lap. So just this is me taking a victory lap. Jay Croucher, do me a favor. Get up right now from the table. Do this for me now, Jay. I need you to get up from the table and do a victory lap on behalf of me because I'm all tied up. I can't actually get out of this. There you go. Thank you, Jay Croucher. That's all I'm asking. There you go. That is my victory lap. There you go. Taking one right now. Ride or die. Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're welcome, America. God bless. The only thing that was frustrating about Amon-Ra St. Brown is that his over-under was 6.5 receptions, and that didn't cash. He got 9 targets. He should have. At the end of, he had four receptions after the first 2 series. I'm like, this is going to cash by halftime. And then he only got 3 the rest of the way, despite the fact that they tried him. There was a play at the end of the first half where they just wanted to do a quick bubble screen, and the lineman just didn't block, and they were able to get a hand on it. Super annoying. But yes, an unbelievable performance from Amon-Ra St. Brown, the first of many. He was a fantasy ride or die for a reason, and on the love list, on the week 1 love list.
So the Lions win.
And by the way, I got nothing else wrong about yesterday. Nothing else wrong. Let's not talk about Sky Moore. Let's just move on. Let's just congratulate me about Amon-Ra St. Brown, congratulate me on David Montgomery, and then let's move on. Let's not discuss Sky Moore at all.
The Lions beat the Chiefs in Kansas City 21-20. You heard Lions coach Dan Campbell at the top of the show, of course. He didn't learn anything. He got verification on who his team is. But as we look at this Lions offense here, Jay, we did get to see the NFL debut, of course, of Jahmyr Gibbs, who, listen, top 15 pick at running back. Some people were surprised. And right away, you could see how explosive this guy is.
Yeah, he looked like an absolute monster. And I think from a fantasy perspective, his usage was probably the biggest story to come out of last night. Obviously, the Chiefs wide receivers and their struggles is its story itself. But I think Gibbs, because of his upside, he's the big one. And what I would say, 2 words to kind of caution against any pessimism around Jahmyr Gibbs. Rex Burkhead. So I think back to Dameon Pierce in week 1 last year where he got just no run, really, relative to Burkhead against the Colts. But that changed pretty quickly. And look, Dave Montgomery's better than Rex Burkhead. I think Dave Montgomery is going to be a thing this year, but I would be shocked if Jahmyr Gibbs continues to get, he played 29% of snaps last night. I think he's going to play more than that going forward.
Yeah, I think when you look at Gibbs also, too, he was a size outlier coming out of college, so they want to be careful with him out of the gate, the amount of hits he's taking. They want him to be as effective as possible with the touches he gets. But when you see the split there, 21 rushes for David Montgomery, 7 for Jahmyr Gibbs. Of course, only 2 catches for Gibbs. We think he'll be a bigger factor in the passing game as well. But, Barry, it just goes to show you, you've talked about it all summer. The Lions love David Montgomery. They have big plans for him, too. Just because they drafted Gibbs in the top 15, Montgomery's going to be a big factor of this offense as well.
Yeah, there's 2 factors here. Number one is we talk all season long, all preseason about, hey, we prefer David Montgomery at cost to Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to be a thing. I think I literally said this, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be 3.5 yards per carry, but it's going to be 20 touches for 30, and that's exactly what it was. He actually averaged 3.5 yards per carry yesterday, 21 touches, and he gets into the end zone, and that's what he's going to be. He's going to be Jamal Williams from last year. The strength of that Lions offense is that offensive line. They want to run. Think about Dan Campbell as a coach, his offensive mentality. They want to run the ball and be physical. Montgomery is somebody that can move the chains for him. He doesn't get hurt. He's awesome in pass protection. It's so important to keep Jared Goff's pocket clean because he's so much better when he's not under pressure, and he's really good at pass protection. So Dave Montgomery's going to be a thing. Last night was not a fluke in terms of his usage. I will say this, however. I would love to make an offer if there's somebody in your league that has Jahmyr Gibbs and is panicked, because I think he is an amazing buy low opportunity. To your point, like, you saw the explosiveness, and yes, it was 21 touches to 9 total touches for Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, they're on the road against the Super Bowl champion. He's a rookie. It's the first game, and think about that game, right? I mean, they had a pick 6. I think if they were trailing in that game, then maybe his usage becomes a little bit different. They end up scoring on a defensive touchdown, so that's a possession that they didn't have. Also, by the way, remember, Jahmyr Gibbs got tripped up by the turf monster, like on the, I don't know what it was, the 7-yard line, the 9-yard line, something like that. He had an opportunity to score a touchdown, and he had the angle. He was going to score, but he gets tripped up by the grass there. I think if he scores that touchdown, the narrative of him is different as well. You saw the explosiveness. He's going to get more run. It's a team that doesn't have a ton of weapons offensively after Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're going to find ways to get him more involved. So I'm very bullish on, obviously, Montgomery. I'll take a victory lap there, Jay. You don't have to do it. I see you're already winded. You don't have to do another victory lap for me on David Montgomery. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be fine. Like, I'm buying Jahmyr Gibbs, not panicking.
Yep. And to me, sorry, Connor,
that's okay.
I think a huge takeaway from last night is that the Lions ran the ball 34 times versus 35 pass attempts for Jared Goff, 36 dropbacks when you add in the sack. So the fact that they ran the ball so much in the game, like, they weren't leading the whole time there. They weren't icing clock in the second half. Right. They were in passing situations, and they wanted to run the ball. And they weren't having that much success running the ball. They averaged 3.5 yards per carry on the ground. So when you factor that in, I think this is going to be a team, particularly until Jameson Williams comes back, this is going to be a team that wants to run the ball. And I don't think it's going to be 21 carries for Montgomery, 7 for Gibbs going forward. I don't think Montgomery's going to get 75% of the carries going forward. So Gibbs is a great buy low.
We're going to answer a ton of questions during last call today, but one that was very notable at the front was, are we worried about Gibbs' usage or snap count? And it seems like, obviously, Barry, not much concern. Jay, not much concern. We did get to see another promising rookie in this Lions offense, and that was Sam LaPorta. Barry, you had him going over 20.
Before we go there, hey,
yeah.
Before we go to LaPorta, I just want to answer this specific question. Do I think it'll be closer to 50-50 by week 6? I don't. It's going to be, but it's not going to be 21-9. It's going to be more like 17-12 in terms of, like, touches per game. Like, so it'll probably be like 65-35. Again, he's going to have the DeAndre Swift role. So I don't think Gibbs touches the ball more than 12 times in most games. But I think because of his explosiveness and because they'll scheme him open and get him on mismatches, I think it's going to be fine. DeAndre Swift, again, was a top 15 fantasy running back on a points per game basis all 3 years he's in Detroit, and I think that's what's ultimately still going to happen for Gibbs. Like, you're going to have to be patient. But, yes, in terms of usage and touches, it's going to be Montgomery. But the explosiveness of Gibbs is still there. Monty over Gibbs at cost, but Gibbs will still be a thing this year. Don't panic.
Right, not all touches are created equal, and Gibbs' efficiency will be phenomenal this season. But back to Sam LaPorta. Barry, you had him going over 29.5 receiving yards. He obviously does that. He's targeted 5 times. He catches all 5 targets for 39 yards. We know this is an offense that, while Jameson Williams is dealing with the 6-game suspension, they are looking for players to make an impact in the pass game that aren't named Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can't have a target every single play, Barry, as much as he would love that. A good start for Sam LaPorta last night.
Yeah, we liked him a lot. We talked about he was my best bet for last night in terms of the over on LaPorta. Played 82% of the team snaps, had a 72% route participation. You'd like to see that a little bit higher, but still 5 targets, 5 receptions. That's the most receptions by a rookie tight end in week 1 since TJ Hawkinson back in 2019. And so for me, I think that's really encouraging. I think he's a high-end tight end too at the moment. I think he probably should be rostered in almost, every normal size league, borderline on a 10-team league, but at 12-team and deeper, absolutely. And I don't mind stashing him on your bench in a 10-teamer as well. He's got tight end 1 upside, but right now, like, I think I was ranking for the rest of the season. Like, I think he's, top 12-ish. Like, very encouraging from Sam LaPorta in week number 1.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon it then, that as explosive as this Lions offense is, and we think it's going to be one of the best offenses around, I mean, last night there was 13 targets going to Josh Reynolds and Marvin Jones Jr. Like, there's not a lot here outside of Amon-Ra until Jameson Williams comes back. And so Sam LaPorta, when we talk about him as a potential tight end 1, if you're talking 12-team leagues, guys who are going around tight end 12 like Dalton Schultz and Cole Kmet are on that borderline. I think LaPorta can absolutely be better than those guys.
So, Barry, LaPorta cashes your best bet. And, Jay, shout out to you because your best bet could always be a scary one because you have to watch till the very end. Jared Goff to not throw an interception.
Thank you, Jared.
Goff, 359 pass attempts now without an interception. That is the third longest streak in NFL history. And since he's joined the Lions are tied for the most wins against the spread in the NFL. They are 23-11 against the spread. So, Jared Goff, people never act excited about him. He's been the victim of some criticism. He obviously got traded from the Rams. It's an incredible number.
Yeah, and look, he's gotten a bit lucky with that. He should have thrown some picks there. The ball went up for grabs a little bit last night. But I think the thing with Goff, it's very clear there is a delineation in his style of play where if he is under pressure, he is not good at all. And if he is kept clean, he is very good to the point where he led a team to the Super Bowl. And if he has a great offensive line and weapons, and he has the offensive line, he has a weapon in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he'll get some more coming back. I mean, I think he's a very solid quarterback. I think the issue from a fantasy perspective, if you're looking to stream Jared Goff, or if you do have him on your bench and you're looking to play him over guys like, Geno Smith or Daniel Jones, if that was your approach, I'm not sure they're going to be throwing the ball that much until Jameson Williams comes back and they get a bit more of an explosive passing attack.
All right, so on to the Chiefs here. This was an odd night for the Chiefs. Obviously, Travis Kelce ruled out well before the game in this one. We knew it would be a collection of players contributing at wide receiver or trying to contribute. And Barry, it just felt like nobody stepped up in the moment out of this group. They literally rotated everybody in. As you see the snap count, if you're watching right now, obviously Noah Gray played plenty without Kelce, but Sky Moore, MVS, Blake Bell, Richie James, Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, and Justin Ross all saw the field. But I think the story, Barry, wasn't that they all played. It was that they didn't come up for Patrick Mahomes at all.
No, they certainly didn't. It was a brutal game for all of them. I mean, I don't know if you've probably all seen the meme of the ball in Kadarius Toney's hands. Like, he's running around and the ball's literally in Kadarius Toney's hands. And it's just like, this play there you go, NFL memes. They did such a great job. This ended up being a Patrick Mahomes pick six. It's unbelievable. The lack of help that poor Mahomes got. By the way, those guys do a great job at NFL_memes. They are hilarious. They do a really, really funny job here. But as you see this footage on your scene, just all the drops. Now, Patrick Mahomes did what he should do, right? As he said after the game, that hey, I trust he's going to be the guy who I go to in those crucial moments. I'm sure those drops will kind of disappear. I don't know, honestly. It doesn't feel like there's any of these guys you can trust. As long as I'm sitting here taking victory laps on David Montgomery and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I need to take, what's the opposite of a victory lap? What's the reverse of a victory lap?
It'd be like a failure fall.
Failure. Whatever it is, I need a failure. Yeah, will you do that for me now, Jay, on Sky Moore? Because I got to cop to the fact. I just need you to do, or just, do me a favor. You're Australian, run backwards. Pretend it's like a toilet. Just run backwards around. Right, there you go. To do my, perfect. There you go. This is what I'm doing for Sky Moore. Thank you, Jay, for playing along. Very Australian of you, very well. Look, I was wrong on Sky Moore. He was in the love list and others receiving votes. Just totally blew the call. I said if you started a Chiefs wide receiver, it should be Sky Moore, and I was wrong. Here's a positive. He played 69% of the snaps. He ran 29 routes. Both those numbers were the highest among wide receivers. So he was out there. He just didn't get any, he just didn't get anything. He only got 3 targets. He got 0 receptions. He got 1 rush for 4 yards. He didn't have a target until the third quarter. I don't know, man. It shows you, how badly they need Travis Kelce, and feels like there's not anyone here that you can trust. I'm certainly not starting Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney next week. Rashee Rice had some moments. He catches he had some nice moments there, but honestly, you don't really feel great about any of these guys. Rashee Rice only ran 12 routes. Right? I mean, I don't know there was anything there. I don't know why Justin Watson doesn't get more run. I feel like every time that guy gets out there, he makes a play. Maybe he's a poor route runner or something like that. But Blake Bell, of course, the backup tight end, gets the touchdown for Noah Gray, but like it just really feels like it's, at the moment, one of the best offenses in football. The only guys you can trust are the quarterback, Kelsey when he comes back, and Pacheco, because the rest of the running back usage, and we'll get there, also is concerning.
Yeah, I think the thing with someone like Sky Moore, someone who's that young and that unknown, we're constantly reestablishing what the baseline is for him. So we just didn't know what he was going to be this year because we didn't see that much of him last year. He's got a lot of pedigree. But if he'd come in last night and was 5 for 75 and a touchdown, we have to readjust our prior pretty quickly and be like, all right, this guy's a high-end wide receiver 3, potential wide receiver 2 this season. But the fact that he was as bad as he was last night in a time where there was all the opportunity in the world, to me that's a massive red flag, even more so than Kadarius Toney, who was terrible and cost him the game. Like, Kadarius Toney's been in the league for 4 years. Kadarius Toney will be fine. I'm not sure how fantasy relevant he'll be, but he's not a bad football player. We need to see more out of Sky Moore.
Yes.
The one thing, though, is that Kelsey, like, we forget that Kelsey makes everything easier for everyone else. He has so much gravity, and I think it'll get easier for the receivers when he is back, which will probably be next week based on reports. But at the same time, I'm not sure if he makes it easy enough where Sky Moore goes from 0 yards and 0 receptions to a fantasy option.
The thing I'll be watching is if they put more on the plate of Rashee Rice. They used a second-round pick on him. Patrick Mahomes personally advocated for them to draft him. They work out together. And the other guys, when you look at it right here, I mean, Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney combined 8 targets, 1 catch for 1 yard, of course, responsible for the pick 6, as we showed. And our research team has crunched the numbers in the spreadsheets. They dropped 800 passes. So I think when you look at it like that, somebody else deserves an opportunity. The guy you used the second-round pick on should absolutely get that shot. So we'll keep an eye on Rashee Rice over the next couple of weeks here. Looking at their backfield, Barry, Jay was half joking and half not joking. Will Clyde Edwards-Helaire just kind of sneak back into the fold here? And he did. He had 6 carries. He caught a pass. Obviously, Pacheco got the most work, but he only had 8 carries. And he did catch 4 passes, and Jerick McKinnon only 1 catch the whole night. So this looks like a classic 3-headed running back by committee. But Barry, is Pacheco really the only guy that you could trust at the moment out of this group?
I think so. Remember, in the preseason, Pacheco was pretty banged up. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we talked about this yesterday when we were previewing the show. Like, don't be surprised if CEH plays a little bit more just because Pacheco was banged up. Remember last year as well, Jerick McKinnon is somebody that, increased his usage as the season goes on. Like, they like McKinnon a lot, but he's also somebody that, like, has struggled with injuries a decent amount in his career. And so it feels like for a team that obviously has Super Bowl aspirations once again, that McKinnon's workload will get increased as the season goes on. But Pacheco, as the game went on, was used more and more. I think the things that are encouraging about Pacheco is that the 4 receptions, as you mentioned, he played the majority of the early down snaps. He was tied for the second most targets on the team. Even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire started the game, he finished with the fewest snaps among running backs. I really feel like CEH will be used enough just to be annoying to those that have Pacheco and McKinnon, but won't be a fantasy relevant option unless something were to happen injury-wise to 2 of them. I will say on McKinnon, man, like 1 reception for 10 yards. He played 86% of the third down snaps, which was good. And as they look at their offense, maybe, there were a couple of times where he was open and like if Mahomes had looked for him, I think would have been a big play. But it's a concern for sure. To answer your question directly, until we see it from McKinnon, it's hard for me to trust a running back that isn't Isaiah Pacheco. I will say that, yes, the passing game usage of Pacheco, and he's going to get more and more early down work as he gets healthier. Next week, he'll have 10 days now until Jacksonville. Pacheco to me is kind of the big winner here. It feels like it's Pacheco and it's then the other 2 guys. I'd still rank McKinnon over CEH, but it does feel a little too 3-headed than we want. A little too much. Is that a phrase?
Yeah, we're going to let it just flow. That's all right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're always looking out for you. Jay, is this, like you kind of hinted at yesterday, maybe like preserving McKinnon because this team plays such a long season year after year? He is a guy that's been banged up throughout his career. And same with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where they're just trying to play this balancing act maybe too.
Potentially, and I think it's going to be matchup driven as well. And to me, a big red flag with the Chiefs running game is that Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor yesterday were terrible.
They looked awful.
And that's those are the 2 starting tackles. That's a big problem potentially.
Yeah.
And those guys weren't great last year either. So that is a concern, is that you think that with the Chiefs backfield that, okay, there might not be insane usage, but you're going to get some of that back with great efficiency because you're in an offense run by Patrick Mahomes and all the gravity that he has. But I mean, last night, Isaiah Pacheco, 2.9 yards per carry on the ground. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 3.7 yards per carry on the ground. It's a very small sample, but that wasn't a great Lions run defense last year. So, look, it's week one, not going to overreact, particularly with Kelsey not out there, but there are some concerns with the Chiefs offense.
Barry, is your concern level just as high watching those guys? A big story during the game was, everybody knows Jawan Taylor everybody thinks it's a false start. It's not. But he was lining up off the line of scrimmage, which is an illegal formation. It's going to be fascinating to see if they crack down on that, not to mention just that those tackles did struggle.
Yeah, it's certainly a concern. It will be interesting to see what they do there. But I do think, to your point, it's hard to judge off of one game, especially when they didn't have Travis Kelce, and it's a fluky game, right? Again, like the Chiefs should have won that game. I mean, by the way, that's who I picked on Sunday Night Football, and I ended up getting that one wrong. The majority of us picked the Chiefs, but like honestly, if Kadarius Toney catches that ball, or they don't have the pick six, like they win that game. Like I mean, there was some fluky stuff that happened there as well. I will say, in fairness, on the other side of the ball, Marvin Jones had an absolutely brutal game for the Lions, and if they don't have their turnover in the red zone as well, like you can play that what if game all day long. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not going to panic yet. Let's see what this offense looks like with Travis Kelce back. But there's no question. By the way, not just Travis Kelce, but also Chris Jones. I mean, they did a pretty good job bottling up the run, but still, to the fact of the matter is Chris Jones makes such a difference to that defensive line. They need to get a deal done with him. And so it's hard for me to judge off of one game. But just what I would say is I'm not rage dropping anyone that I have on the Chiefs. If you have Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, one of these guys, I am, however, benching all of the Chiefs' offensive skill players other than Mahomes, Kelsey, and Pacheco until further notice, until we see it against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, Jay, nobody should be writing off the Chiefs after one game where they're without two of their best non-Mahomes players.
No, and the Chiefs are still 2.5-point favorites in Jacksonville right now, which seems a little bit high after watching last night. We'll see what Kelsey is like, but
that's the big thing.
Yeah, I don't think that the Chiefs' offense is going to be as bad as it looked last night. And to your point, Matthew, the Chiefs, everything went wrong for them. And if Toney makes the catch, or they don't have the pick six, or also if Sky Moore brings in the 4th and 25, which kind of felt like he should have, then all of a sudden they win, and they potentially win by double digits. So I think the Chiefs will be okay.
All right, so as we crawl towards the weekend here, let's look at some players outside of obviously the scope of this game that have returned to practice. Obviously, you guys will be on Fantasy Football pregame Sunday morning at 11, but these are the players that have returned to practice. Devon Achane, who was dealing with the shoulder for the Dolphins. Jackson Smith-Njigba coming off the fractured wrist, a very early return for him. We'll see if he'll be able to suit up. Jerry Jeudy. Terry McLaurin has been dealing with the turf toe, but it sounds like he wants to play. Treylon Burks. Mark Andrews with the undisclosed injury, and George Kittle, who's battled a lot over the last couple seasons here. Barry, who's the one that jumps out to you that you think could either make a big impact or notably you're a little bit more concerned about, could be kind of a chicken player because it seems early?
Well, in terms of these guys, I mean, a couple of guys, like, assuming they're active, and we'll, again, to your point, we're going to break this all down on Fantasy Football pregame, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on Peacock, me and Jay and Michael Smith. But Kittle makes me a little bit nervous. Jerry Jeudy makes me nervous. Treylon Burks makes me nervous, just again, because we don't know what their role is going to be in that offense and how fully healthy they are as well. Two other notable things that I want to just talk about here. So in terms of not on that list, Romeo Doubs was limited yesterday in practice, but Christian Watson's still out. Again, really like Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. If you're looking for a Kelsey replacement, you didn't play Noah Gray and you're still sifting around. I do think Musgrave is pretty interesting this weekend against the Bears, and especially because I don't expect Watson to play, and Doubs makes me nervous even if he's active. Also, two weird things that just came across. First off, Ken Walker yesterday was added to the injury list. And you never like to see players added midweek to the injury list. So that's going to be a story to track there. Could it be some Zach Charbonnet on Sunday for the Seahawks? Just something to watch out there and be aware of with Ken Walker. And then just as we were going to air, Andrew Callahan, who does a great job over there at NBC Boston, tweets out that, hey, Rhamondre Stevenson among 3 Patriots missing to start Friday's practice. So, again, we don't know why Rhamondre Stevenson missed practice, but that's a weird one that he wouldn't be there on Friday. So just a heads up there, that something to note, that at least at the beginning of practice, Rhamondre Stevenson was absent. So we'll figure out if he was sick, it's a day off, or if there's something, if there is a chance of him missing the game on Sunday. That would be obviously a big story.
Yeah, I think with all these guys like Jeudy, Achane, Burks, looks like they're all going to play and they're trending in that direction. And look, a lot of what we do in the preseason is we're projecting out. Week 1 is all about like information finding and then figuring out what is real from that information. So I think we're going to find out a decent amount about, all right, how are Jeudy and Sutton used in the Denver offense? How are Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins used? How much does Devin Achane cut into Raheem Mostert? All of that stuff we're going to learn. But Connor, to me, the most troubling one is Ken Walker, who
100%.
just lives on the injury report and was there a lot of the back end of last. Is this just who he's going to be going forward?
It starts to feel that way, right? I mean, a player that's often hurt starts to believe that that's a trend, and he was an amazing player in college, but he was a one-year wonder. I want to make that clear. Massive one-year wonder, and he was phenomenal. He looked great as a rookie, but remember how much time he missed in August and how they had to ramp him back up, and felt like he finished the season banged up as well, and now we're kind of back to square one this season once again, except Zach Charbonnet, a second-round pick, is there. So now Seattle has even more motivation, I think, to look for somebody else. I'm not saying Kenneth Walker is irrelevant, right? But everybody that drafts Kenneth Walker wants him to be the guy or the majority guy. And with Charbonnet there, Kenneth Walker always dealing with something. And it feels like a lot of soft tissue kind of stuff. I would be a little concerned of the long trajectory that we're starting to see there.
Yep, and look, Kenneth Walker was awesome when he was on the field last year. Like, he really helped their push into the playoffs, even though the touchdowns dried up a little towards the end. But he was just constantly hurt, and it was always a thing where we were talking about him every fantasy football pre-game on Sunday. Just, is this guy actually is he going to play, or is he going to be limited? Is he going to be on a pitch count? And I think at some point as well, when you're a coaching staff, if you have another option there who's explosive and isn't hurt every week, then maybe you start to lean into him, particularly for a Seattle team that's just been through the Rashad Penny experience as well. And it kind of feels like Kenneth Walker might have a little bit of Rashad Penny about him. Don't want to write him off. He's still young, and it's nothing like, it's not an ACL injury. It's nothing crazy, but it's just all these little nicks that are just constantly appearing for him.
With that, we will take our first break, but when we're back, it's what's on tap at the Bud Light bar. We'll be talking about the games that we're drinking to.
Okay, now you get to make the headline for you going into this season. What would it be, since we haven't seen you on the field yet?
Yeah, if I would say going into this year, I think this is about to be my best year that I ever put together. And within my 3 years, I think this is going to be a year that a lot of people talk about. And a lot of people, some are going to be surprised and some might not. They're going to say, I knew he was capable of that. And there's going to be some that's going to be like, it's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Micah Parsons gets candid with Maria Taylor. Check the full interview on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. The Cowboys visit the Giants on Sunday Night Football. Barry and the Football Night in America crew get you started at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC.
By the way, I
We're
appreciate
here at the
that,
Bud Light.
Connor, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Barry. I was just
gonna say, no, I appreciate you saying Barry and the Football Night in America crew, because it's literally the only time in my entire life that someone's gonna mention me before everyone else on Football Night in America. It's literally like whatever. Like I said, I'm like a special teams player. I'm like the kicker on that team. You know what I mean? Like, Maria's our quarterback, and then it just kind of goes down from there. And yeah. I'm like, whatever. I'm like the long snapper.
I would say, let's go long snapper, Barry. You know what I'll always say to you. You can definitely lose the team the game. You cannot win the team the game. But I'm Ron Burgundy.
Correct.
I read what the ad says. So, all right. You saw it right there. We're at the Bud Light bar. It's What's on Tap. These are Sunday's matchups with the highest point totals. What's on Tap is brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. Let's take a look at the Sunday games with the highest point totals, meaning likely fertile ground for fantasy owners. And we are going to start with, of course, Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys traveling to play the Giants. The point total, Jay, is set at 45.5 for this one. As we look at, obviously, we know Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, they're in your lineup. You feel great about it. You're excited about it. But who else in this game, from a fantasy perspective, on the Cowboys side, actually matters and is noteworthy?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't feel great starting Jake Ferguson, but I'm interested to see what his role is on this team. And this isn't a Hollywood element, more of an art house curiosity, but I am interested to see what the split is between Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks and just how that shakes up. They're still relatively big names. Like Michael Gallup isn't that far removed from, multiple 100 target seasons, so a year further off the ACL. Interested to see what he has, and Brandon Cooks, who's been brought in to fortify that offense. Also interested to see just how they use CeeDee Lamb. He was getting more run in the slot towards the end of last season. So in terms of actual starting options, I don't really feel great outside of Pollard, Lamb, and Matthews' man Dak Prescott though.
Barry, when you look at the Cowboys offense this year, obviously super high on CD, super high on Pollard, there's a lot of volume there. Do you think it runs specifically through them, or is there a world where Brandon Cooks can kind of settle in as this true number 2 option rather than him being balanced with Gallup?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there. Brandon Cooks is somebody who has been very productive on a bunch of different teams in his NFL career. Think about last year, right? Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz, they're both gone, and you're like, so? That's 163 targets that are up for grabs in last year's offense, a 30% target share. So obviously, look, the passing game is going to go through CeeDee Lamb, 8s, as I like to call him. All of his friends call him 8s. We call him 8s. But so whether it's 8s or Tony Pollard, there's room in that offense. That offense is going to be good enough to support somebody else. But the question, to your point, is it Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup? I will say that I do have Cooks ranked higher than Gallup this week. But it is kind of let's see how it is. Cooks comes in at wide receiver 38 for me. So in a standard normal league, I'm waiting. I'm not starting him, right? You'd have to be in a pretty deep league and pretty desperate to have to start Brandon Cooks. I agree with you, Jay, that the only guys you're really starting is, 8s and Pollard. And if Dak Prescott is your starting quarterback, then start him. But listen, I have Dak Prescott at QB 13, guys. Like the Giants last year had only 2 quarterbacks to throw for 300 yards. Dak Prescott does not run anymore, right? He just hasn't been, the guy that got to 5-6 rushing touchdowns a year. And so with Kellen Moore now in Los Angeles with the Chargers, I think that's a downgrade for Dak Prescott. So I'm not crazy about him on the road at New York on Sunday night. He's outside my top 12 for the week. I don't know. So I think he's merely a, slightly high-end QB2 this week.
Barry, over on the Giants side of things, we know this is a pretty top-heavy offense on paper. Expect a ton of work again for Saquon Barkley, who led the team in targets last year. Expect a ton of work for their new addition at tight end for Darren Waller. But will you start anybody on the Giants offense besides those 2, counting Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I would start Daniel Jones. Like, I have Daniel Jones at QB 10 this week. Think about this. 2 different games against Dallas last year. Averaged over 14 fantasy points per game, had 93 rushing yards in those 2 games. And I think Daniel Jones, and I've said this a lot, I think he's going to be underrated in fantasy this year just because he's kind of a boring personality. He's got a boring name. He's not fun, but again, more mobile than you think. 2nd year in Dayball system, which is fantasy friendly. The addition of Darren Waller, Saquon Barkley fully healthy. And they've added some pieces. So the rookie in Jalen Wyatt, like Isaiah Hodgins, who came into that team mid-season last year. You're like, Isaiah Hodgins, whatever. But he's somebody who was productive for them last year, and again, didn't join the team really until the middle of the year. So I like the Giants on Sunday night. By the way, I think they cover the 3.5. I actually think they win outright on Sunday night, and I do think Daniel Jones is a QB1, a low-end QB1 this week. I'd prefer Daniel Jones to Dak Prescott on Sunday night.
Jay, no Giants wide receiver ranked inside Barry's top 50. Is there anybody you're at least keeping tabs on as a breakout, or does it just feel like this offense is funneled through the 2 guys we mentioned at the top with Barkley and Waller, counting the passing game for Barkley?
Yeah, Barkley and Waller might be their 2 wide receivers effectively, and they might lead the team in targets as Saquon actually did last year. There's some curiosities, interested to see, Jalen Hyatt and just how that situation shakes out. I suspect it's probably going to shake out similar to how it shook out in Kansas City last night, where there's just going to be a lot of randomness and you're not feeling really good about anything. But I do agree on Daniel Jones. I think his rushing ability is constantly underrated, and he's shown that, look, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Cowboys, so I think it will be high scoring. And either Daniel Jones is playing well and they're keeping pace and he's scoring, or they're having to play from behind. And I think Daniel Jones proved last year that, if nothing else, he is very much good enough to do the kind of Kirk Cousins in Washington thing of really annihilating a prevent defense and piling up stats in the second half. So I think Daniel Jones has a pretty high floor.
All right, our next.
Yeah, I'll also just say
Barry.
this. I'll say that I was going to say one quick comment on Daniel Jones. Like and I've made this point before, but again, players are not just statistical pieces of meat. They are human beings with emotions, and with ego and insecurities and tempers and everything like that. And I just think the mindset of Daniel Jones, who comes into camp last year with a new coach, a new general manager, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, they didn't do anything in the offseason. He's just like, wow. Like, are we just being left to dead here, and am I going to be out of the league in a year or fighting for a backup job? There's a different mindset when he's walking in the building last year in that situation as to this year when he gets the big contract in the offseason. He's succeeded in Dayball's system. They go on the road. They win a playoff game, right? And now he knows he's the man. And they've added some pieces, most notably Darren Waller, to that offense, where it's just like there's a different mindset when you come into that building every day where Daniel Jones knows, okay, I'm not looking over my shoulder. I can just relax. I can run this offense because I'm not worried about it. I'm not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think people underlook the human element of people when we try to analyze player performance, because athletes, like any of us, are people with emotions, and that the mental game matters.
Yep, and I think on that, one of the most important elements of that is just second year in the system with Brian Daboll, and now he's just got better weapons. He has much better weapons than he had last year, mainly because of Darren Waller, and they have a lot of wide receivers that we don't know who's going to be good, but they have a lot of options and a lot of lottery tickets, and some of these guys are going to turn out well, and Daniel Jones is going to be a beneficiary.
And very quietly, he should get the best pass protection of his career this year with Andrew Thomas paid and looking like one of the best tackles in the NFL, and hopefully a bump up in year 2 for Evan Neal, who they invested a high first-round pick in as well. That takes us to our second game, guys, which is an absolute fantasy buffet, and that's Miami traveling to play the Chargers. The Chargers 3-point favorites in this game, but let's crank things up. The over-under is set at 51 for this one, as if you're watching, you see Barry's ranks, the top players expected to play in this game. Of course, the Chargers, we know what Justin Herbert's capable of, Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. But, Barry, how about Mike Williams and Gerald Everett in this game? When you look at Williams, we've heard some rumblings throughout the summer, moved around, used different in the formations as a slot guy. Obviously, this is an offense under Kellen Moore that we think will be pass-happy enough, and you have to have a ton of faith in Justin Herbert.
Yeah, obviously, like Herbert was one of the guys that was on my short list for my fantasy ride or die. Jay was, capping for him, saying like that's who I should have picked as well. So we expect Herbert to have a big game here. Herbert made my love list, and one of the reasons why is he's going to spread it around. Make no mistake, the Dolphins' defense will be better this year. I thought the hiring of Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator is a great move. I'm a big Vic Fangio fan as a defensive coordinator. He's great. But obviously losing Jalen Ramsey, that doesn't help. Now, the question with Mike Williams is how much Xavier Howard does he see, right? Because Howard sometimes has matched up when they played, has matched up on Williams. I think they'll move Williams around enough that he gets free. We've been seeing some good preseason usage from him. I have Williams at wide receiver 22. 16.9 fantasy points in the 9 games with 6 or more targets last season. He had 6 targets against Miami the last time they played. So Williams last year in that Dolphins game, 6 for 116 and a touchdown. He was wide receiver 5 that week. So I do think Williams, I'm starting Williams in all the leagues I have him in. Again, I have him as a borderline wide receiver 2. Everett, sure. It's worth noting that the Dolphins allowed 10 different touchdowns to tight ends last season, which is 4th most in the NFL. Dalton Schultz ranked top 5 among tight ends in receptions and TDs over the past 2 years under Kellen Moore, obviously. So I do think this is a nice game and a kind of a coming out party for the Chargers offense here, because as good as the scheme will be with Fangio, he just doesn't have the players right now. So I think you're starting Mike Williams, and Everett, who's my tight end 11, is a viable streamer this week, again, if you're trying to replace Travis Kelce.
Jay, on the Miami side of things, listen, we know what Tua can do with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle around him, especially Waddle. He had the midsection injury, but he's back at practice right now. But I think a big storyline that we always talk about is Teron Armstead not practicing. He is one of those guys, if it's game day and he feels right, he'll gut through it. But are you comfortable starting Tua knowing that the line could be a little shaky? And Chargers can rush the passer.
Yeah, they can, and interested to see what J.C. Jackson looks like this season, because he was terrible last year and then he got hurt. Looks like he's healthy and will play. So this Chargers defense could be really good, but at the same time, I know Terron Armstead is huge. He is, along with Trent Williams, just about the most important offensive lineman to the success of his team, but if Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle are all playing, I think you just have to start Tua every week. Not many people have drafted Tua as their QB2. You probably drafted him as your starter. I think you've just got to roll with it. I am a little concerned by the fact that last year when they played the Chargers, that's the worst I've ever seen Tua Tagovailoa play. I'm not sure if that was a scheme thing, but there was some weird travel stuff with Miami heading into that game. So I think that he will be fine, and I think you just have to start him.
Barry, in the backfield, we know Jeff Wilson on short-term IR. Devon Chain, sure, back at practice, great. A rookie, though. I mean, is this the must-start Mostert show right now for Raheem Mostert, one of the better values in drafts at the moment?
I think he is. I think basically, again, given no Jeff Wilson and Devon Chain may play, we'll see probably some limited snaps. You'll probably see some Von Ahmed in there as well. But last year, look, you can't really look at the numbers from last year, 11 for 37, because Jeff Wilson Jr. was active in that game, right? But now he's on the IR. Last year, in the 11 games where he got at least 12 touches, he averaged over 13 fantasy points per game. So Mostert, who should easily get that number against the Chargers, is my running back 23. He is, to me, once again, Raheem must start.
All right, that takes us to our final game here, and we got news on Bengals-Browns while we were on break. Zach Taylor, the coach of the Bengals, confirmed Joe Burrow will start in this game. It's something we've been expecting after he missed the summer with the calf strain. Yep. This over-under was clearly baking that in, Jay, because it's set at 47.5. So
by the way.
Yes?
By the way, Connor, just want to say, number one, first off, congratulations to Joe Burrow, highest paid player in the NFL, great NFL quarterback, and, of course, willing fantasy life.
Yeah, where's that money going, Matthew Berry?
So, you know, clearly, like, it wasn't tough, you know, when we pitched it to him, and he was like, I'm in, and now it's easy to see why. He knew it was coming. Easy to be an investor there. So I don't know if he's a proud investor, but he's certainly a willing investor of FantasyLife.com, and we're thrilled for Joe Burrow.
The Bengals 2-point favorites traveling to Cleveland to play the Browns. Once again, this over-under set at 47.5, Jay. We don't have to go through, are you going to play Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, or Joe Burrow? But I think the bigger question, Jay, is are Tyler Boyd and maybe even more notably Irv Smith, as everybody's trying to stream tight ends this week due to the Kelsey injury, are they viable options in this game?
I feel like we're going to be talking about Tyler Boyd a lot as a flex option that people tweet in. Can I start Tyler Boyd in my flex? Hopefully you've got a better option. I don't feel great about it. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have really struggled against the Browns defense in matchups past. Myles Garrett has done whatever he's wanted. Now, the Bengals offensive line is in a better state than it has been perhaps ever for Joe Burrow. The fact they bring in Orlando Brown Jr., who Kansas City seemed to miss last night, I think that will help a lot. At the same time, I mean, the Browns defense, the passing defense was solid last year. So just the wide receiver 3 in this matchup in Tyler Boyd. Don't feel great about that. Don't feel great about Irv Smith either.
Barry, over on the Cleveland side, listen, Nick Chubb, fire him up. We know that. Amari Cooper, fire him up. But where's the confidence level starting Elijah Moore? I saw you had him as wide receiver 56. And then, of course, David Njoku, who we'd assume will be a top tight end going into this week.
Yeah, Njoku is another one that I think is sort of a must-start. He's my tight end 8. I think if you drafted Njoku, it's unlikely that you have a better tight end. He led all tight ends last year in terms of percentage of team red zone targets, whether it was Jacoby Brissett or Deshaun Watson. They were looking for Njoku, who is such a good blocker that he's basically out there in terms of every snap. Last year, the Browns ranked 4th in tight end target share. It's the same offense from last year. Week 14 versus the Bengals last season, he had 9 targets. So I think Njoku will be involved early and often. Again, have him as a top 8 tight end. But for me, that Njoku and Chubb and Amari Cooper are the only guys. I'm not starting Elijah Moore, to your point about wide receiver 56. We've seen some flashes in the preseason. They've used him in the background. They've tried to get creative. But I want to see it first. And also, guys, I'm nervous about Deshaun Watson in this game too, right? You know, like, ideally, you're not starting Deshaun Watson in this game. You want to see, let me see him look like the guy that we haven't seen for 3 years. I need to see him look like that before I'm willing to say, like, yeah, sure, go ahead and start him. Like, again, Jay, you talked about at the top of the show, Week 1 is really about information gathering and trying to sort of figure out, okay, what are we dealing with here? And so Watson is somebody that would be on my bench this week if I had an even viable option, and there should be. Like, I'd much prefer, a number of quarterbacks, I should say, over Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I like how as well you kind of 4% imitated my accent in saying information gathering. Very good, Matthew.
Yeah.
I think Deshaun Watson, talk about, adjusting your baseline and your priors off of a guy like Sky Moore. Completely different situation, but Deshaun Watson, I think he is the player who you most have to adjust your baseline on coming out of this week than anyone else, because if he comes out and he's Houston Deshaun Watson, all of a sudden, I think you just treat that guy so he's almost just back. Not all the way, but certainly a huge point in that favor. And if he's bad again against the Bengals defense, which is good, it's an above average defense, but it's not the best defense in the league. If he's bad again and looks like the guy he was at the end of last season, I think that's massive red flags for him, for Elijah Moore, for that passing game in general. So yeah, very interested to see what he looks like against the Bengals.
And don't forget, Jay, it's bad for Donovan Peoples-Jones.
It's bad for DPJ.
So Lawrence, if you're out there, we're rooting for you. All right, with that, we will take
all of us. Let's be clear.
Not all of us.
Not all of us.
True. With that, we will take our last break. But when we're back, it's last call. We're answering your mailbag questions. All right, guys, it's time for the official Fantasy Football Happy Hour season predictions. And Barry, we have to start with you. What do you got for us here?
All right, well, so in terms of Super Bowl win, obviously it's my Commanders, right? So I think I like the Commanders to win. I think in the NFC Championship, it's the Commanders over whoever. AFC Champion is also the Commanders. MVP, Sam Howell. Offensive Player of the Rookie year is Terry McLaurin. Daron Payne is my Defensive Player of the Year. Fantasy MVP, also Sam Howell. Pass touchdown leader, Sam Howell. Rushing yards leader, Brian Robinson, barely over Antonio Gibson. And receiving yards leader, Jahan Dotson. Again, barely over Terry McLaurin. So should be a great season for my 17-0 Commanders.
I'm shocked that Sam Howell wasn't also the rushing yards leader and the receiving yards leader for that matter. Why not? The man can do it all.
I'm a big fan of Terry McLaurin winning Offensive Player of the Year, but Jahan Dotson led the league in receiving yards.
Daron Payne.
There's a logic there because Dotson's going to catch all the touchdowns. So exactly. So there's a logic there. Don't you worry. Dotson will have the yards and McLaurin will have more touchdowns, I think. And don't worry about it. I like the fact that your biggest flaw with that isn't the fact that I have the Commanders winning the AFC, but that
Daron Payne.
How they pulled that off.
All right. Yeah, exactly. All right. No, I did it for real. Guys. So why don't we go ahead and reveal it here in terms of my Super Bowl champion. I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be the Eagles. I think my last year's ride or die, Jalen Hurts, leads them over Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
I'm with you, Barry. I took the Eagles as well. I have them, though, over the Bengals. We know the kind of dogfight that the AFC is going to be. Jay, you're the only one of us three to go against the Eagles. You don't even have them in your Super Bowl going Buffalo over Dallas.
Yeah, I think people are really sleeping on Buffalo. Last year, Buffalo, when they played Kansas City in the middle of the season, they went into Kansas City as 2.5-point favorites. The Bills were 2.5-point favorites in Kansas City. They beat Kansas City. And then Josh Allen did his elbow. And then obviously they dealt with a lot of turmoil at the end of the season. I think by the playoffs, they were just spent. They were just done.
Losing Von Miller is a big factor, too.
That was a big factor. He'll be back. They'll have more health across the board, I would imagine. I think Gabe Davis will be better. I just think this team is a juggernaut. I think they're the best team in the NFL, and particularly after Kansas City lost. Now that they have the Bills have a much better chance to get the 1 seed. So yeah, I've got the Bills as my Super Bowl team.
Barry, the one that jumps out to me for you, forget the Super Bowl. How about Baltimore making it to the AFC Championship? You are buying in on an extended Lamar Jackson working under Todd Monken with new weapons.
I really am. Look, that's it. Think about the Ravens are always really well coached. By the way, and I agree with Jay. I mean, Jay and I both have the Bills and an NFC East team in the Super Bowl. I have the Eagles. He has the Cowboys. I'm right. He's wrong. But we both like the Bills to make the final game. But to your point about the Ravens, think about Baltimore last year. They're always well coached under John Harbaugh. Last year, they came very close to beating the Bengals on the road with Tyler Huntley. And honestly, there were some calls there that hadn't gone their way. Honestly, you could make the argument they should have beaten Cincinnati last year on the road. And now I think Lamar Jackson, obviously he needs to stay healthy, but that's a team that improved its offense in a significant way. Their defense is always still going to be tough. They're going to be able to run the ball effectively. I think that's potentially a complete team that people are sleeping on. It all depends on Lamar Jackson's health. But if he's healthy, yeah, give me the Ravens in the AFC title game. You bet.
Yep.
Let's dive into our awards predictions. And sorry, Deron Payne, you just missed the cut on this one. Jay, we'll start with you, of course, for this one. So how did you forget me and you both having Patrick Mahomes, right? That's no fun. I think the one that stands out for me is Derrick Henry. Every single year for the last 3 years is predicting the decline of Derrick Henry, yet you have him taking home Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a boring choice in a way, but perhaps not, because I think people underrate Derrick Henry. Here's what he's done the past 4 years. His worst season the past 4 years that he stayed healthy was probably last year, and all he did was 1,538 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, in a season where, that team dealt with a lot of injuries. I just think I trust in him to get the credit if he wins the rushing title, if he carries that team on his back, because you know that he's going to get the workload. You know that he's going to get the carries, particularly going into free agency. So I think Derrick Henry is a guy who, for Offensive Player of the Year, a huge part of that is you need to be the identity of your offense. That's why I think, players who play with superstars like Stephon Diggs probably just isn't going to get the credit. But Derrick Henry, he is that team, and I think he'll get the credit if he wins the rushing title.
So, Barry, you went with Ja'Marr Chase here, who does play with a lot of talent. Of course, we know how good Joe Burrow is, and alongside T. Higgins as well. What would Chase have to do to separate himself to win this award? I would assume this would also be a fantasy wide receiver 1 finish for Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah, I think so. My thought process here with Ja'Marr Chase is obviously, insanely talented player who continues to get better every single year. We think this offense is going to take another step. I'm in on the Bills. I'm surprised that Jay didn't take Josh Allen after all the talk about the Bills being the best team in the AFC. Why you didn't think Josh Allen makes MVP? Because if they do what Jay and I both think the Bills do, it'll be Josh Allen. But I feel like they're going to want to reward the Bengals somehow. So if Josh Allen or Mahomes gets MVP, they've got to do something, I think, for the Bengals. And so for me, Ja'Marr Chase makes the most sense. Offensive Player of the Year is rarely a quarterback, because that's usually the MVP. So it's going to be a skill position player. And I don't know, I just feel like in a league where they devalue running backs, I feel like it's going to be a wide receiver. So give me Ja'Marr Chase. Could have been Justin Jefferson as well, but I think Ja'Marr Chase just has a monster year in a very good offense.
Yeah, I think just on Josh Allen for MVP, I agree. I think Josh Allen is probably the second best player in the NFL after Patrick Mahomes. It's just MVP. There's so much about avoiding interceptions. Just voters hate turnovers, and Josh Allen just throws so many interceptions. He's thrown 39 the past 3 years. So if he can cut that down, then I think he can absolutely win MVP. It might even be the favorite to do so, with Mahomes having chalked up a loss already. But I think that's going to be always part of his game.
And finally, our stat leaders predictions. So this includes the fantasy MVP. And Jay, you went with the guy that I picked to be Offensive Player of the Year in Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and the reason the inconsistency with having Derrick Henry OPOY and Derrick Henry as the rushing yards leader while going with Pollard as the fantasy MVP, it's just because of the receiving work that Pollard can add in that perhaps Henry can't. So I think that the Cowboys are a juggernaut. I think that Pollard is going to be able to use a heavy workload to put up massive stats both in the rushing game and the passing game. And also, he's a guy going outside the top 10 picks, and I think that he has a chance to end up as the number 1 player in fantasy.
Barry, you and I are riding with Lamar Jackson as our fantasy MVP, but the one big one that jumps out here, because I feel like everybody's a little nervous to take him too early, as talented as he is, it's because he's a rookie, and that's Bijan Robinson as your rushing yards leader. I remember a show we did weeks ago. You had Bijan to potentially finish as RB1, and we know the workload under Arthur Smith in terms of how often they want to run the ball should be huge in Bijan's rookie season.
Yeah, look, you look at the 3 choices there. Bijan, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, all particularly good choices here. But my argument on Henry is the offensive line. My argument on Tony Pollard is its rushing yards leader. Like, total yards leader might be Tony Pollard, but he's so involved in the passing game. Tyler Algier got 1,000 yards for this Falcons team last year, and all due respect to Tyler Algier, he ain't anywhere close to Bijan Robinson. The Falcons have an underrated offensive line. I think it's one of the better ones in the NFL. We know the volume should be there for Bijan Robinson. The only thing that can stop him is if if they do give like double-digit touches to Tyler Algier. But ultimately, I think Bijan Robinson's talent, that scheme, that offensive line, that volume, vaults him to be the rushing yards leader as a rookie.
All right, we will check through all of these at the end of the year, see who got the most right. The Commanders list, if there's more right on that than Barry's actual list. We'll be right back after this.
How much do you talk throughout the season? How much is he watching your games and giving you advice throughout the year?
I'm on the phone with my brother every day, just talking to him about life. You know, now he got a son now, he got family and stuff like that. So everything's been good, but I think, I talk to my brother every night. He always watches my games, so after my games, I'll call him before he goes to sleep for his game, and vice versa. So we're always talking. I always try to pick his brain. Not too much probably during the season, just because he got focused too, but we talk all the time.
Maryland quarterback Talia Tagovailoa and the Terrapins host Charlotte in primetime tomorrow on Big Ten Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Barry, your Terps 1-0. Feeling good about your Big Ten score?
1-0. Yeah, they everyone knows I'm a lifelong diehard Maryland Terrapins fan since last week. 38-6, I believe they beat Towson. Just absolutely dominated and crushed them like a grape, just honestly, made them. I believe they've now shut down their football program, from what I understand, after the beatdown that my Terps gave them. And so, looking forward to going to 2-0. Big Saturday night. There we go. Maryland. Big Ten football right here on Peacock, NBC. I'm a company
Maryland
man.
head coach Mike Loxley, very proud of your choice there, Barry. Very proud. So, all right, let's get into mailbag questions here.
It was the right choice.
What the people are. Oh, Barry, you have some updated news too, right? I know we got into the news earlier in the show that Rhamondre
just real
was not
quickly,
seen at
just
practice.
a couple of. Yeah, so Doug Kyde, who does a great job for the Boston Herald, tweeting out that Rhamondre Stevenson, per source, is still expected to play on Sunday despite his absence from practice today. So that's good news there. Kevin Bowen reporting that final Colts practice of the week, Zach Moss going for a third straight day. So again, that is a situation. So everyone's talking up Deion Jackson, but the fact of the matter is we may see Zach Moss. It may be the three-headed monster with Moss, Evan Hull, and Deion Jackson. The Colts running back situation is something I want to stay far away from, but it's worth picking up Zach Moss as available in your league just to sort of see if he becomes the guy, because towards the end of last year he was, as long as Jonathan Taylor is not with a team. DJ Shark has been officially been ruled out by the Panthers. Adam Thielen listed as questionable. So it could be the Hayden Hurst, Jonathan Mingo, Terrace Marshall show on Sunday for Carolina.
Really?
We will see about that.
And of course, you guys will have all the updates on that on Fantasy Football pregame at 11 a.m. Eastern on Peacock on Sunday. All right, let's get into Barry's mailbag here. First one is is that Cheese Curd?
Yeah, it is.
Wow, Cheese Curd with a question for you, Matthew. Flex options and half-point PPR. I'm not crazy for going Brian Robinson over Gibson. Yes, I have both. And Mike Evans. Am I?
You're certainly not. Look, I mean, I have Brian Robinson at 29. I have Antonio Gibson at 31. So I have both. I have Robinson over Gibson. So that's my rankings. And I think Robinson's just got a better chance at a touchdown. So I don't think you are. And Mike Evans, by the way, I have at wide receiver 23. Again, the Vikings defense last year was brutal. And so Mike Evans, who's always a chance to score a touchdown here, the positives of this is you're diversifying your portfolio, as it were. If something, again, think about what happened last night. If you went Pacheco and McKinnon, Pacheco was all right, but McKinnon did nothing. Right? You just, when something happens, I'm in a guillotine league, a very deep, a 17-team guillotine league, and I had Kelsey and McKinnon. And so, look, I 17 teams, I had to start Noah Gray. So, I'm probably going to get chopped in that league because 0 for 2. So, especially, I don't mind going Robinson and Evans here because I think both guys will have solid games. The positives are I don't think you can screw this up. I actually like all three this weekend. But, yeah, I don't think you're crazy at all for going Robinson and Evans.
Our next question is from Anthony Nickel, who asked, I have to play either Van Jefferson, Zay, or Christian Watson in full PPR. Not sure which way to go. Love your show, by the way. When can I drink for free? And I believe this is
Yeah,
Zay
you can
Flowers.
always drink for. Yeah. So that's exactly right. Well, so I have Van Jefferson at 37, Zay Flowers at 54. I have Christian Watson at 21. If he's active, Christian Watson's the obvious guy there. I don't think Christian Watson's going to play. So for me, it's Van Jefferson. Zay Flowers may go off. Look, the concern there, real quickly, is they're playing Houston. They could be killing Houston. Like, I don't know how much they're going to need to throw against Houston, even though I know they want to. But like, we're dealing with the information we know. My expectation is that we know that Van Jefferson is likely to lead the Rams wide receivers in targets. Zay Flowers could lead the Ravens wide receivers in targets. He could also be like 5th on the team in targets because Andrews is going to be healthy. They've got Rashad Bateman back. They've also got Odell Beckham Jr. And like, you never know when whatever. They suddenly, Isaiah Likely or somebody else or, the Devin Duvernays of the world. So I do like Zay Flowers quite a bit, but for this week, I think Jefferson is the safer guy. So that's what I would do.
I think with Jefferson, he's kind of gotten the rough end of the stick where he is the number 1 wide receiver for Matthew Stafford, who literally just won the Super Bowl like 18 months ago and is, 34, 35 years old and is going up against the mediocre defense in Seattle. So, yeah, I think Van Jefferson, until Cooper Kupp comes back, is a perfectly viable kind of flex option.
Another update here, Jay. We've talked about how the Aussies have been rallying. They rallied in Kansas City for you, and now they will be in New York City for Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. People are wondering, should we invite them on the show Monday?
We absolutely should. This J10 thing has really taken off all across the Midwest in America, as you can see, and much of the country. Some comparing it to Fight Club when Ed Norton and Brad Pitt were really getting off that off the ground midway through that film. So yeah, very happy for these guys and hope they had a good time in Kansas City.
That's it for us.
I feel like they should show proof of their J10. I think I want to see a receipt where they use the J10 promo code before we invite them on the show.
All right. Join us for Fantasy Football pregame, 11 a.m. Eastern on Peacock. Adios.
Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.